I'm not gonna lie, Leafs fans, this feels like one of those moments where you can almost feel the organization standing at a crossroads right now. On one side, we're hearing about Toronto aggressively looking to rebuild a blue line that completely struggled last season. And on the other side, there's already a huge conversation starting about who could end up being the next voice behind the bench after Craig Berube's departure. Because think about this for a second. If John Chaika and Matt Sundin are serious about changing the direction of this team, then it isn't just about bringing in players anymore. It's about building an entire identity. We're talking about potential names like Rasmus Andersson, Darren Reddish, and Colton Parayko being connected to the Leafs, while at the same time, a completely new coaching era could also be coming. This offseason suddenly feels way bigger than simple roster moves, and we're going to break down why these two stories together might reveal exactly where this franchise is heading. And before we jump in, if you're part of Leafs Nation and love talking hockey every day, help us reach 1,200 subscribers. We're getting really close, and I'd love to have you here for the ride.
So now we're starting to see something that honestly feels pretty obvious if you watched the Leafs last season. The blue line simply wasn't good enough. And when you look back at all the stretches where this team struggled, it felt like Toronto was constantly chasing stability on defense. The report highlights 3 names that could realistically help fix that problem, and each one brings something a little different to the table. Rasmus Andersson immediately jumps out because he would probably become the Leafs' top right-shot defenseman the moment he walked through the door. A guy putting up 17 goals and 47 points while playing in every situation is exactly the type of player this team has been missing. He isn't just a defensive body, he can contribute offensively, help on special teams, and give Toronto a much more complete presence on the back end. Then there's Darren Reddish, and honestly, his numbers surprised me. 22 goals and 70 points in 73 games from a defenseman is ridiculous production. More importantly, he produced heavily on the power play, which matters because there were moments last season where Toronto's offense looked predictable and flat. Adding a defenseman who can create from the blue line changes the entire dynamic of the attack. And then you've got Colton Parayko, who honestly feels like the safer and more traditional option. He's the type of player that doesn't always create headlines, but teams realize how valuable he is when he's gone. Big, right-shot defensemen who can play top-pair minutes and bring stability are not easy to find, and with a manageable contract through 2029-30, there's definitely logic there. The interesting thing here is that all 3 names point toward the same message from management. They know the blue line cannot come back looking the same way it did last season. That part feels very clear. But now here's where things get even more interesting, because fixing the roster is one thing. Deciding who is actually going to coach that roster might end up being even bigger. And what's starting to happen behind the scenes could completely change the direction of this team moving forward. Now, this coaching situation suddenly feels a lot more interesting because the Leafs are no longer just talking about changing players, they're talking about potentially changing the entire identity of the team. According to the reports, John Chaika is taking a wide approach in searching for the next head coach with a real focus on fit, style, and culture instead of simply grabbing the biggest available name.
And honestly, after what happened last season, I actually understand that approach. We've all seen this organization make moves that looked good on paper and then watch things somehow feel disconnected once the season started. It sounds like Chaika and Matt Sundin are trying to avoid repeating that mistake by figuring out exactly what type of hockey they want this team to play before they decide who stands behind the bench. The names being discussed are pretty fascinating too. Bruce Cassidy is obviously the giant name in the room because he brings championship experience and instantly becomes one of the biggest coaching targets available. If you're a Leafs fan, you hear a name like that and your attention immediately jumps because he's proven he can handle pressure, and Toronto is probably the biggest pressure cooker in hockey. Then there are names that feel a little more intriguing and maybe even more risky, like Manny Malhotra and David Carl. Malhotra already knows parts of this organization and has experience developing players, while Carl has built an incredible winning reputation outside the NHL. Those are the kinds of names that make you think maybe the Leafs are looking for fresh energy instead of another recycled coaching hire. You've also got experienced options like Mike Yeo, Jack Capuano, John Gruden, and Joe Sacco being mentioned, which tells me this search really is going wide.
That part honestly makes me optimistic, because it doesn't feel like Trika is walking into this process already knowing the answer. It feels like he's actually trying to find the right answer. And when you connect this story to what we talked about earlier regarding the defense, the picture starts becoming pretty clear. The Leafs are not just trying to patch holes anymore. First, we hear about major defensive targets who could reshape the blue line, and now we're hearing about a coaching search built around creating an identity instead of just finding a replacement. That makes this feel less like random off-season moves and more like an organization trying to rebuild its foundation. As a fan, I'd say this moment feels more decisive than anything else. There's definitely pressure, there's definitely risk, but for the first time in a while, it feels like Toronto might actually be trying to solve the bigger problem instead of only treating the symptoms. When you look at the bigger picture, this feels like a defining moment for the Maple Leafs, because we're no longer talking about one problem or one position that needs fixing. We're talking about rebuilding the blue line while at the same time searching for the coach who's going to define how this team actually plays. Those are two massive decisions, and they're decisions that can completely change the direction of this franchise over the next few years. As a fan, I actually think this puts Toronto in a decisive situation rather than a hopeless one. There's pressure, there's risk, and there's absolutely no room for mistakes, but at least it feels like the organization is finally looking deeper than just adding random pieces and hoping everything magically works out. If they bring in the right players and match them with the right coach, there's a real chance this team starts looking like a serious contender again, instead of just a team trying to survive another season. But if they get these decisions wrong, we're going to be sitting here having the exact same conversations next year, and honestly, I think every Leafs fan is exhausted by that cycle. Right now, there's still reason for hope, but this front office has to get this summer right. And now, I want to hear from you guys. Out of those defense targets and all the coaching possibilities being discussed, who would you want to see in Toronto next season? Drop your thoughts down in the comments because I'm really curious where Leafs Nation stands on this. And if you're enjoying the content and hanging out with me here every day talking Leafs hockey, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and help us reach 1,300 subscribers. We're getting closer, and I'd love to hit that milestone with this community.